It's been 1,353 days since I last visited mainland China. But today, I'm coming live from the Bund, and I'm joined by a special friend.
Hey everyone.
Everybody, this is Alex from Reporterfy Media. You guys know him as, Alex, you're a fantastic YouTuber, my friend.
Thank you very much.
And you know what's incredible, Alex, is that you and I met through YouTube. We've been close friends for over 3 years. Yeah. We've collaborated on a lot of videos. We've done, a lot of live streams together. And it is just so amazing that our friendship could basically culminate to this point right now, where you and I are walking down one of the most historic places in all of China, a place with a ton of history. I mean, this is amazing. It's so good to be in Shanghai.
And I'll tell you, most viewers might think that you and I have known each other for many years. We have, of course.
Yeah. But
within about 1 hour is the first time I've actually met him in person.
That's right.
And it's kind of an interesting feeling because you've shared the screen with this person for many years. You've had ideas together.
Yeah.
And now meeting that person through such a turbulent time in history makes it even more special.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alex, so I want to tell a little story here for the viewers, because one of the interesting things is Alex reached out to me when I had a channel of about 3,000 subscribers.
Yeah, remember that.
And I remember you reaching out, and you had launched the Let's Talk China show. And I remember this was an interesting time in our lives because, all of us were locked down.
Yeah.
It was the middle of the pandemic. I think it was May or June 2020. So I was there in Vancouver, making content about China, wanting to get back to China. And we just had this amazing bond. And I think it was great because we connected with a lot of other YouTubers as well. And we're all just passionate about telling the story of China. And we basically had this vision of, one day, once China opens up, you know what? This is the city I lived in for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just like, hey man, we're gonna come back to Shanghai. We should meet in Shanghai. We should meet here on the Bund, and let's do a little walk and talk and basically just share a little bit about our expat journeys here.
That whole show, for me, it was designed to actually give China a voice when they really needed it.
Yeah.
And reaching out to you, I just knew the first time you came on that show, we have this saying for you. It's the ambassador of peace.
Yeah.
And really, it was a special time. The channels really started to grow quickly at that time.
Yeah.
And also, we started to get a lot of comments and people just tune in saying, we need your support, guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
So I want everybody to take a look at this view, because this is sometimes what we often forget about China, is just how normal life is.
Yeah.
Okay? We're at one of the busiest tourist sites in all of China. This is the Bund. It's a historical area. So we're standing on the Puxi side. This is the Huangpu River, which divides the city. And basically everything that you're seeing here, okay, this building here is the Oriental Pearl TV Tower. This was built in the early 1990s. This was the first building built on this side of the river. And so, prior to 1990, this was nothing but rice fields. And this Oriental Pearl TV Tower was built as kind of an economic symbol to say that this is going to be China opening up and really, spurring forward in the economic movement. And I mean, Alex, this is what I want people to really see, is just look how many Chinese people are here just being tourists. Just being living a normal life. I mean, look at this. We're going to come over here. I mean, look at this, the tour groups that are here. And this is what I think a lot of people, they get wrong about China, is we forget how just normal life is in China, right? Yeah. I mean, China has a country of 1.4 billion people that are doing the same things that we're doing in our own home countries back home, right? They're living. They're coming here as tourists. They're wanting to spend time with their family. They want to get their pictures taken here on the Bund. I mean, look at the scenes right here. This is quite incredible, actually.
And let's not forget all the different people from the regions all over China. I mean, different dialects, people coming from, southwest China, the eastern part of China, the south part of China. Really, this is quite a diverse country.
Oh, it's incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
And that's something that we reference a lot is the fact that, for example, in China, there's over 300 different dialects that are spoken here inside of this country. And I guarantee you, for a lot of these, Chinese that are visiting here, this is one of the most, Shanghai is the city in China, right? It is the modern metropolis. It's a very developed. It's a city that many Chinese, for example, if they're on holiday, maybe they've just started summer break, with their family, they're going to bring their kids here. Let's come to the famous, Bund. Let's see the history. Let's see the big buildings. And this is exactly what people are doing. So what's amazing as well is I've seen a lot of foreigners here walking on the street as well, a handful of foreigners, and and some of them have tour guides with them, and there's a big excitement here. I think a lot of people, where China's open again, all right? I mean, that's the only reason that I'm back now, right?
This is the thing, and I want to show you just behind us here, is that Cyrus, I was here in this country during this pandemic, and this is actually a beautiful sight to see here. All these people out. Things were very different about 4 or 5 months ago. This was there's pretty much nobody here.
That's right.
And to see the smiles on the faces, the people that are happy, and they're experiencing back, that one-on-one contact again, that is finally back here in China. We have a ways to go, but it's definitely nice to see. And you took the opportunity to come to China once it was open. We made that promise together, and well, here we are. It's quite beautiful to see.
All right, we're living that China dream. We're back in the game. So Alex, I want you to tell everybody, because you have an interesting story. I mean, you actually moved to China in the middle of the pandemic.
Yes.
So what was the motivation for you? Why would you want to come to China in the middle of a pandemic? I think that's quite an interesting thing our viewers would probably be interested to learn about.
Well, good question. I was in Thailand at the time, and Thailand went through a very, very difficult lockdown. Yeah. And that lockdown lasted not weeks, but months.
Yeah.
And the preparations of the government there was very complicated. Foreigners were struggling. And, as you brought that up, the motivation for China, well, it's quite interesting. I had an offer to come help one of the social media platforms in one of the biggest cities here in China called Chongqing.
Yeah.
And they kept reaching out to me saying, come on, we would like you to come here. We like what you're doing. We know that you are an ambassador of the city, and we really want to work with you. And at first I was like, well, do I want to do this? I thought about it for a while, and then I said, I have to do this.
Yeah.
So I got on the plane, right smack in the middle of the pandemic, came here of August in 2021, and haven't looked back. Yeah, it was quite surreal to arrive to China. I'd been here many times before that, but planting, putting the foundation down and really promoting the city, which is now, I don't know if you know this, one of China's most traveled cities domestically here in the country, Chongqing.
Really? Yeah, I can see that. I mean, the interesting thing with the pandemic is that there was a nice period of time there in China where essentially, COVID was not spreading internally, right? There was a good period of about 12 to 15 months there where, China was locked down, basically no one in, no one out, unless you went through like the 21 or 28-day quarantine. But there was a good period of 12 to 15 months where people were traveling domestically a lot.
It was functioning,
right?
Like the country was functioning. Of course, yes, certain industries are going to be impacted. The import-export business could be impacted. Yeah. Some actually really benefited. Yeah. Some it was quite catastrophic.
Right.
But from my understanding and my feeling here was the strategy was it's almost impossible we're going to be able to come out of this unscathed.
Yeah.
So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try for the softest landing as possible.
Right.
And to me, that's what I can make of it. I'm a person that was living outside of China before it and inside of China, and that's just my opinion. And well, here we are.
Well, I think China's done a good job. I mean, they were able to successfully navigate through the pandemic. Obviously, every country had severe complications from that, whether they're financial or or mortalities. Obviously we had a lot of loss of life in America as well. But I think the interesting thing was, I remember when China finally reopened this on March 15th, 2023, is when they reinstated all of the tourist visas and really said, all right, we're going to fully open up again. And that's when it was time for me to come back, because I said, I need to bring this YouTube channel on the road, and it's important that I meet people on the ground in China, and that we start telling people a little bit more about what's really happening inside of this country. Because I'm not here to say that everything's perfect, but I think what you can look at, this is the site that we're looking at right now. I mean, we're seeing a tourist area that is completely busy right now. I mean, there's a lot of people that are coming from all over China. They're coming here to the beautiful city of Shanghai. Again, I mean, this is the view. This is what people are here for. One of the most iconic skylines in all of China.
Really went through a lot of tough years here, not just because of the pandemic, but reputation-wise. It was quite tarnished in the international media scene. And I felt that, and I felt that, as a foreigner here, what can I do to try to get the message out to the international audience? And being in Chongqing, it's not as cosmopolitan as this city. I mean, this city is an icon.
Yeah,
of course. And I recommend probably to my audience, of course, come to Chongqing first, but definitely Shanghai should be, I would say, one of the first cities to land in if you're ever coming to this country.
Absolutely. I mean, Shanghai is a great city. It's a great starting place, either Shanghai or Beijing. I mean, they're great spots that have the international flights coming in. But it's also, you know, I've actually never been out west. I've never been to Chongqing.
Nope.
You know, in my
we're going to get them there. We're going to get them there.
So maybe we can do that in the fall. You know, have to definitely plan a return trip. But I think it's actually very surreal for me to be back here in China.
I bet.
I mean, you know, the last time I visited was almost 4 years ago, and the interesting thing is that, you know, the longer that you spend outside of China, the more that you start to feel a little bit that connection kind of starts to wear off, and you know, you need to be here on the ground, you know, talking with these Chinese guys, right? Right? 不懂的吗？没关系，我们说中文的可以了。
Well, I've got a question for you, Cyrus. Well, have you noticed much of a change in coming here this time than usual?
I mean, you know what's interesting, Alex, is that right now between the U.S. and China, we're operating at around 10% capacity.
That's it, huh?
of what it was in 2019.
Okay.
So the airfares to get here are extremely expensive. It's very limited. And there just doesn't seem to be as much demand as before.
Now, something that has changed since we started our collaborations probably 4 years ago is one thing I've noticed here is I didn't notice much inflation when I was living here over the last few years.
Yeah.
Now that has changed on the other side of the pond.
It has, yeah. I mean, inflation, it's interesting. It's interesting to hear that because our inflation in America and Western countries is, you know, has certainly affected a lot of people. I mean, just your day-to-day life, going to the grocery store, going to restaurants, you know, all of those prices have been inflated quite a lot. So I think that probably means, you know, China's done a good job with its supply chains. You know, I mean, and the interesting thing about it as well is that during the pandemic, I was in Canada, and the Western supermarkets really struggled with their supply chains.
Oh, did they?
And
really?
they did, but if you went to Chinatown and went to the Chinese supermarkets, they always had their supply chains. I mean, they never ran out of stuff. It was very interesting. We have a very big market called TNT, which is the #1 Chinese supermarket throughout Canada, and they always were able to keep their shelves filled. So I don't know, maybe they're just managing that a little bit better.
Another interesting point that I learned living here in the last couple of years is this word community.
Yeah.
You know, during the pandemic, communities were very important, and I was starting to realize that a lot of these medical people that were helping out doing testing in the area were volunteers. They weren't paid medical staff.
That's right.
It was the community, and within this district, within the street blocks, they were well organized, and they would call you, "Are you okay? Do you have groceries? Can we deliver some food for you? Can we help you in any way possible?" And that says to me that, you know, here's a country that is really under pressure during difficult times, and they all rallied together to help one another.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned here. You know, many people around the world don't even know who their neighbors are.
Yeah, that's true.
But this entire community knew who my wife and I were within, you know, a couple of weeks of moving there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I think China is very united in that in regard. I mean, it's a very diverse country, but I mean, you know, I think generally speaking, I think, you know, most Chinese people are very proud of their country, the progress that they've been able to see. 你好，你好，怎么样？
非常好。
非常好吗？这是我朋友第一次来上海
啊，第一次来上海。
对，第一次来上海了。
欢迎你，
欢迎
中国欢迎你。
中国欢迎。
欢迎你。
哦，太好！你是哪里人的？
我浙江。
浙江，那好，那附近的，附近的，不错，太好了，谢谢你了。好，谢谢。This is the type of conversations you have when I told him this is your first time in Shanghai. I had to improvise there a little bit, you know. So he's from Zhejiang province.
Okay.
You know, but first message, right? You know, China welcomes you. You know, welcome here. You know, I mean, this is actually amazing. I mean, I didn't expect it to be this busy.
No.
Yeah, this is great.
Well, I have to commend you also, Cyrus. I mean, you have put a lot of time, a lot of energy into really trying to, like I said, the ambassador of peace tag. It will always be with me and you, because I view you as a person that can sit back, take in this data, calculate it, and then express it to both audiences. You know, there's people that have opinions on one side and then on the other.
That's right.
And you're quite balanced on your opinions, and you're trying to not have conflict. It's more of kind of calming the tensions.
I think what's really important, Alex, is this person-to-person diplomacy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the random Chinese guy that we just ran into, is, you know, how do we establish, you know, a little bit of a relationship there, right? I mean, and it's just simply, you know, obviously speaking a bit of Chinese to him is a great way to make that bridge. But I mean, this is one of the things that I really want people to understand, is that, you know, here we are as foreigners. I mean, we can walk up to any of these people here, any of these people.
Problem.
They're gonna be, you know, China welcomes you, we welcome you. I mean, honestly, while we're walking down the Bund here, everyone's looking at us, right? Everybody's looking at, you know, what we're doing, and they want to be part of this. And it's just this great energy of China. It's just so much fun.
And it's good to see, you know, also some foreigners coming back to the city as well.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, when I came into the airport today, you know, there's a group of Americans that were there, and I was listening to them as they were going through border patrol there. And one guy said, "Look, I'm in the agricultural field. I'm a project manager." I met another American executive that actually works as a theme park consultant, and so she's building a project for Hasbro up in Changchun, which is in the northeast part of China. So they're building a brand new theme park there. And so I think this is what a lot of people we really need to understand, is that our worlds are so connected. You know, we live in a global economy. China will remain a very integral part of that global economy. And again, this is why we need to bring the YouTube channel back to China to really showcase these stories, and just kind of, you know, China, you know, for many people in the West, it's just this country we don't know about. It's this forbidden city, if you will.
Like a mirage.
Is
it really there?
Is it really there? I mean, and so, but what I think people forget is just how real it is. I mean, again, this is, do you want to see China? Like, this is what's happening in China right now. Just people are living a normal life. And I think a lot of times we forget this. A lot of times we forget just how, at the end of the day, you know, we're more similar than we are different, right? I mean, as much as we're enjoying this nice walk on the Bund, so is everybody else, right? And everyone has a very similar objective in life, right? I mean, if we're parents, you know, we want our children to live a better life. We want to improve in our job. You know, we want to, you know, spend time with our family. We want to celebrate holidays. Life in America and life in China are definitely more similar than they are different.
I agree.
And so, I mean, this is why it's so important that people can come to China, come and see it. And if you can't, you know, that's why we're making YouTube videos, to kind of show you what life is really like here.
And it's interesting, I mean, you have to understand the magnitude of the population here. Of course, you know, the viewers understand 1.5 billion, but to get to that number, this is a country that produces anywhere from 17 to 19 million babies a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a lot of people, and it's a country that's been on the move, and at the same time, it's really trying to help other parts of the region. Of course, this is Shanghai, but China has other regions that are up and coming as well. Yeah. And you can see that infrastructure. You know, I'm from the city of Chongqing, southwest China. We're pretty much what we call nicknamed 0 kilometer city. Okay. It's the start of the Belt Road, the BRI in China.
Okay.
And this is a city that 20 some years ago was full of smog. I remember my wife sending me the picture of Chongqing saying, you know what, let's go to this city that the mainstream media says don't go.
Right.
And we saw this really blown out black smog you know, photo of Chongqing, and then arrived there a few weeks later saying, wait a minute, this is not even close to what we see. And I mean, of course, coming here, I had a real sense of, you know, in Shanghai, it has this feeling of just, I can't put my finger on it, but it's, I would say, you know, this cosmopolitan feeling that you have when you go to cities like New York, or Paris, real icons.
Well, I mean, look at the building behind us. Okay, so the fun history with this is that, you know, all of these buildings behind us, these were all banks built by the expats. So a lot of Scottish and Englishmen came here in the early, you know, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they built all of these classic buildings that look like they're straight out of the UK, right out of there, very European style. And so Shanghai, back in the early 1990s, I mean, this was the place to be for many British expats, and many expats would come here. I'm in fact staying at the Waldorf Astoria here. Interesting enough, when Ulysses S. Grant came here in the late 1880s, you know, that is not the same building, it's been rebuilt, but that's basically the same piece of land that, you know, American presidents have been on. Very popular spot for many expats in the day that was really running Shanghai back in 1910 and 20 with all of this international trade. So, I mean, this has been a port of trade for over 100 years. You know, of course, hundreds of years.
You know, the Chinese, they learned a lot about this too. And you know, the Shanghai Stock Exchange is one of the third biggest stock exchanges.
Yeah.
And this exchange, that you could really sense in the 90s. They put their foot to the floor, and this city just skyrocketed.
It did.
And now it is what it is today. You know, a booming mega city, but a very beautiful, safe.
And you know what's amazing, Alex, is another local expression that we have in Shanghai, which is quite interesting, is that we're on the Puxi side, which has always been the historic side. It's and so there was always a saying that it's better to have a bed in Puxi than a home in Pudong, because you know, Puxi is where the action is. But let's go ahead and zoom over. And
now the one building here, Cyrus, when we scroll to it, is the second largest building in the world. Now, during one of my live streams the other day there, I said disputably, actually, this could be possibly the largest building. If you take the antenna off the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, I mean, or the last 15 floors, this is the building, I would say, to me, visually, and probably, questionably, the largest, man-made structure in the world. But it's so iconic, and then we nickname the bottle opener building. You see that there as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other building behind it is quite iconic as well. Even though it's a little bit smaller, these buildings get lost sometimes in the morning fog, and it just looks breathtaking.
Yeah, I mean, this is incredible. I mean, this is, I of course arrived in Shanghai in 2007 when the bottle opener and the Shanghai Tower were not there. So the Jinmao, that is the Jinmao Tower. Yeah, that's the Jinmao Tower. And it's actually another piece of history here. The Jinmao Tower is actually meant to be look like a pen. If you look at that, it looks like a pen, and there's a building that's right next to it, and it actually is in the shape of a book, and it's supposed to symbolize China writing its future into the future. And that's really what Shanghai represents.
And another thing that I want to mention here, you know, this is a major trade route here, and I'm not sure if the viewers understand, but the port here in Shanghai is actually the 8th largest economy in the world. Just the port in Shanghai is the 8th largest economy in the world. And this is, you know, the famous river here, but also we have the Yangtze River, which is one of the longest rivers in the world, kind of meets up along the way here. And these are major, major trade routes. You can just imagine all the trade that comes down this river. It pretty much ends up somewhere in your house, that's for sure.
So Alex, this is really surreal for me to be back here in Shanghai after a long hiatus. But you know, when I first came to China, I would come down here to the Bund on my days off, and I would just do exactly like we're doing. I would go for a stroll. I would practice my Chinese with people here, and I mean, I spent a lot of days here. You know, a lot of my days off, a lot of time here on the Bund, and just enjoying the beauty of what Shanghai really is. And it's incredible to see it. I mean, it's just. I almost get a little emotional, really, you know, because I came to Shanghai when I was 23 years old. I graduated university and I bought a one-way ticket here. I started my professional career, but you know, my first big job after university was in Shanghai. The first house that I bought was in Shanghai. Where I met my wife was in Shanghai. I always say I came to Shanghai as a 23-year-old boy and I left as a 30-year-old man. You know, that's really where I changed in from a boy to a man, and these 7 years in Shanghai specifically were very pivotal in my life, and you know, I really owe a lot to the city. It really taught me a lot about life, and it was obviously my first time leaving America and living in a new country, and you know, I just can't say enough about you know, the amazing times that I've had in this city. And what can I say? Look at this building here. I love Shanghai. Right there, that's awesome.
You know, as you mentioned Shanghai, one of the first cities that I ever arrived in was actually Shenzhen.
Okay.
And we were in the import-export business for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, going to the Canton Fair there in Guangzhou,
Yeah.
the big Canton Fair down in that area. I mean, that was the place, and probably still is the place to make, you know, your move in the import-export business.
Definitely, definitely.
That was
Canton
20
Fair
years
for
ago.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, China's been part of my life for, you know, decades now as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everybody, I want to thank Alex from Reporterfy Media for joining me today on this is a special live stream. It's a sunset walk on the Bund here in Shanghai. We've got a lot of content coming at you. We're going to be hitting 4 cities in the next 7 days here in China. And I've got a very busy schedule. And again, the goal is really, what is the goal of this trip to China? It's really to see, you know, what is China like in 2023? I think I come in with a different perspective, you know, having been outside of the country for the past 4 years. But it's also a very serendipitous homecoming for me. I mean, this is, again, Shanghai is my second home. My best friend in the world lives here. We're going to be, you know, filming a lot of content for you guys and showing you the content that you want to see. So many of you have been amazing supporters. You have been an incredible community for both Alex and I. As again, you know, Alex, I always want to thank you, buddy, because I remember you reaching out to me when I had 3,000 subscribers and inviting me on your show. And you know, I have to give I'm going to give ourselves a little pat on the back here because you know, 3 years ago we had a vision that, hey, let's just keep working hard on our YouTube channels. There'll come a day where you and I are in Shanghai walking on the Bund, and you know, we had that vision 3 years ago.
I agree.
And we really did. And here we are in China. You know, both of us have been able to grow our YouTube channels up. And again, kind of share that positive message that you have as well. I mean, I really commend you for your work in Chongqing because, you know, again, like I kind of feel bad. I lived in Shanghai for 7 years, never once made it out west to Chongqing, and that's a big regret that I have. But that being said, you know, let's dream up the next thing that we need to do together, and I think that's coming to visit you and the iChongqing team.
Absolutely.
And definitely experiencing that and showcasing that world-class city. Because everyone knows Shanghai. I mean, Shanghai is truly world-class, but there's so many other cities throughout China that deserve a lot of you know, praise and attention and certainly recognition, and that's the goal. We're going to showcase those as well.
Yeah, and I want to thank actually everyone on the Bund here today. They've seen us walk along with this camera, and they've been so polite. They've just, you know, separated themselves from the camera so we don't bump into them. But what a pleasure it has been to walk along here. We waited years for this, man.
We did, brother.
I appreciate it, buddy.
That was awesome, man.
All right,
really,
everyone.
A lot of fun. Guys, stay tuned. If you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed to Alex's channel and mine. I'm going to drop a link down in the description below. And stay tuned for some more epic China content coming your way.